Welcome into Coach's Corner. Jordan Woodruff with you. Great to have you along as we are in the mix. Sports starting up for Ponca City Schools. Many schools already in action. Of course, they've done stuff that they're allowed to do over the summer. And we have a school year that is upon us. So we're taking some time to talk to a lot of the coaches that do have things going on right now. And we'll start their season early. And one of those is Coach Wendy Landis. How are you doing, Coach?
Doing pretty good. Just had practice early this morning, and so, we're going at it already.
Yeah, and let's talk about first with cross country. What goes on during the summer? So you guys, naturally, you want kids to continue to run and keep their time, at least don't have a big slide backwards. So talk about the process of what you're trying to get kids to do during the summertime.
We have always offered through our booster club, or it's our one fundraiser that we have, is summer running club, where the kids just run with me all summer as part of that booster club. It's not a formal practice. We don't do the things that we would normally do in practice, but it keeps them running. And so we had summer running club. Formal practices could start July 15th, but we don't start ours until August 5th just because it's hard to get everybody back. So we'll start actual full-blown afternoon practices on August the 5th where everybody will come in. But there's a core 20 or 30, sometimes 40 that are running. Bert Miner has been helping with Summer Running Club. So he's been it was his internship through me, and so he's been kind of doing some stuff with them this summer. So they've been, a lot of them have been going since the, 1st of June. But that the meeting that we have at the end of the school year, I highly encourage that they continue running. So, and this group's really good about it. They don't, the ones that have consistently ran, they don't come in kind of cold turkey. The ones that really want to run the whole summer.
Well, so. and that's the thing is like you don't formally start until August 5th where you can July 15th.
Yeah.
I'm sure part of that is the fact that you do have a striving summer running club that keeps them active, so you don't have to have them report on July 15th. The ones that are running that are going to compete at a high level, they're showing up.
They actually, a lot of them are. And then the ones that maybe haven't ran cross country before, that are on the roster that work all summer, they come in August the 5th and they start, and that still gives them 2 to 3 weeks before that first meet to get their bases and stuff. And so we get going, and we get going pretty fast.
Yeah, and with cross country, you got distance running. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. So what's the summer club running like? Or how do y'all start? Do y'all change routes? Like, what do you do?
We don't really do a lot of route running. Bert and I sat down, and through his internship, we let him do some of the programming and stuff with it because Bert's still running, at Haskell. But we do some progression runs on Mondays and Wednesdays where they just get faster every mile, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays we do more of our strides. We add more of just like go out and run for 35-minute runs. We're building in a lot of core work. Getting them used to their warm-ups, their cool-downs, talking about nutrition and hydration, and starting all of those basic principles through summer running. And then a lot of them will run. Strava is a big running app that everybody uses, and that's where they post them all. So all of those kids have their own little Strava app that they use, and they kind of run off to their own. They meet in the evenings and run and do all sorts of stuff.
How good is the app, just even for a coach, to have something like that?
I like it. I personally started using it again because now I can kind of do some things, unlike last year when I hobbled around on crutches half the season. But this year I can kind of move around more. But I like it. That's where Bert is the one that kind of got everybody kind of geared towards it because that's what he uses. But a lot of them use it. So it's kind of nice if they'll come in and show me the route, during practice, this is what I ran, and you can see what their breakdown of their times and different things are.
Speaking of that, you said, you were injured. You were hobbling along everywhere. But how was it hard? Was it hard for you to get back in the flow of running after that?
It was. They made me stay out a full year of running just because they wanted it to completely heal, and I still can't run like I used to, but I get to jog every now and then, so now I'm not afraid to jog during a meet and run after them. So just even to get to walk and not be on crutches is a thing for me.
Well, let's talk about the one thing I think every coach looks at before they get started officially is what their turnout's going to be. So August 5th will be kind of the official people reporting. You get that, but as a coach you get an idea. You talk to the kids, how that's going to kind of how many you're going to have out there, who you're going to have out there. So let's talk about the numbers. How many people you have going to be running this year?
At the end of last year, they did a pre-enrollment at East, West, and at the high school, and they would send me the rosters, and they were like, if there's anybody that you maybe see that doesn't need to be on this, or, go ahead and start approving these rosters. And the last roster I approved, there were close to 100 runners in junior high and high school. So the numbers are significant this year. A lot of young runners.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of seniors. I don't have a lot of juniors even. So a core group of sophomore, and then last year's eighth graders. That was my big eighth grade class last year. They're all freshmen this year. So now I get them at the high school level.
Well, let's talk about some of those upperclassmen. You don't have many, so you can probably name them all, but those are always kids that you're going to lean on. They know the process naturally. They know the grind of it, going to meets and such.
Yeah.
So talk about some of those upperclassmen going to help you this year.
Caden Gunther has been running the entire summer, as has Dalton Kirchner, and those junior and senior there. We have Julia Looper, who's ran since she was a freshman. She'll be a core senior. We have some different ones, kind of going through. But JC Davis was my freshman that she went to state right off the gate. And then her sophomore year had that season-ending injury. And so she ended up having that subsequent surgery that took her out of track, but she's back. So she'll be a junior that'll come in with some leadership. And then there's a few other juniors and seniors that have enrolled that haven't shown up for summer running and weren't necessarily active as much last year. But Pierce Wagner, I think, may be coming back. I'm not sure if Annie Leamy is going to return. But there's different ones. But that core group of sophomores, Wesley Vaughn is back, and he was one of my top runners last year. Gabby Alva, one of the top girls, she will be back. And then we have Rylan Rader and Zoe Wagner and Emma Van Heusen, all those girls that are kind of that core that have ran since they were freshmen, even 8th grade and 7th grade. And then that core group last year of 8th grade boys, Brody Miner, Adam King, who didn't hardly lose at all last year, will be a freshman on this year's squad. And so it'll be fun to watch.
You talk about, and you mention a lot of younger names there. You go through the list. What's it like as far as, we think about football, basketball, and the experience level that comes with that. What's the experience level, and how does it matter in competitive running?
With competitive running, you want to start them young and get them used to that distance. Right. It's hard between that junior, that 8th grade and 9th grade year, because in 8th grade they're running either 1.5 or 2 miles, and they don't cross over that. And then when they're freshmen, they get thrown into that 5K, and so they're immediately stepping up in distance. And so that's why it's kind of imperative and crucial that we get that mileage under their belt. But I'm telling you, this is a competitive group. We had a community mile night as one of our practices a couple of weeks ago, to where we opened it up, just one of our practices for the community, come run with us. And we had adults, we had little kids, either running an 800 or a mile. And I will tell you that high school boys, they wanted to beat each other. It was the most competitive thing I've ever seen in my entire life, just to outrun each other. So our practices are more competitive, which I think makes us competitive against those bigger schools that we're going to see.
What's it like for these younger kids that haven't competitively ran, and all of a sudden they're thrown into a 5K, and then 3K into it, they're starting to trail, and those seniors that they're trying to beat, they can pull away, right?
Yes, and that's the key thing that we're trying to teach them, is that most of the meets now that we go to have that a varsity division, which is what you normally see. You have your top 7 runners, but a lot of these meets that we're going to create an elite category, and it's for those faster runners.
Right.
And so it kind of separates it out, where there's not just varsity, junior varsity anymore. We have this elite, varsity, and then junior varsity. Well, this year we're going to throw them in the elite. We're not going to let them from the get-go, settle for here. We're going to toss them up into the elite, and then our JV, we're going to kick to that varsity, and then we'll have room to take more kids. So that way we're actually running more kids. We're letting more kids compete for that time, but we're going to throw them in the category from the get-go. And that Deer Creek meet's our first one out the gate for varsity, and we're going to toss them against the Edmond Norths and the Deer Creeks.
Yeah, so you're talking about those elite runners with good runners from across the state, but when you talk about that, what is like an elite time? So like somebody jogging or maybe trying to get their blood pumping on 5K, probably 25, 30 minutes, right?
Absolutely.
But if you're going to medal in cross country, what do you need?
You got to be down in the 18s. I mean, at the very beginning of the season, we have those guys that are running 15s at state. And, those are the times that we're always gunning to get those low times. I'm not sure. Bert, ran in the 17s, and that got him to state. Mason ran in the 17s, and he got even faster. If you can get your time towards the end of the season, you're going to be able to run and compete at state. But those elite runners are popping off the 15s and 16s.
And is it like golf when you talk about like a handicap? Some people will get to a certain level, and it's just hard to get to that next level, and they want to break through so bad. So does everybody kind of have the point, or is it just trying to break through that ceiling to get to that next level?
You have that threshold, but that's when we change how we program. We program in practice where we're going to do more mile repeats, more 1K repeats. We're going to change the way we practice so that they're getting negative splits. Like, the idea is that we can get faster every mile, and so that's how we train. We're peaking right in October when we need to.
Yeah. All right. And you said October. That's towards the end. That's when you want to peak. The season, though, will be here before you know it. In fact, you don't even get one day of school under your belt before you have to go on a trip, it sounds like.
Yes, we're taking our junior high to Deer Creek the day after school starts. So we'll go on that Thursday, and the junior high will run at Deer Creek, and then that Saturday we'll take our varsity there. And then it just goes weekly until October. In October, we start our kind of championship. That's what I call it, a playoff. We have a championship meet through Guthrie, and then we have our conference, and then we go regionals and state.
You know, I think a lot of people know track and field, kind of how those meets go. Walk us through what a cross country meet is like, because I imagine you don't have as many events going on, but at the same time, you have just as many kids sometimes.
There's just as many people. Sometimes at those junior high meets, you'll have 300 on a starting line. But for a typical meet, that a lot of across the state, and I don't even know if it's nationwide, they started splitting the high school and junior high meets so that you weren't there throughout the hot points of the day. Because a meet can go 4 to 5 hours, and when you're looking at running at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the peak of August, it's hot, and so they started separating them out to where most of the junior high meets are either run later in the evening or early in the morning on their own individual day. But when you get there, it's fast. If you're just running at high school, we'll get there. Most of our meets we travel because I like to compete, and so we're going to run and go against the Wassos. We're going to go against the Deer Creeks. We're going to go against those. But for instance, we're going to leave at 5 a.m. to go down to Deer Creek, and the race starts at 7:30. And then by 10 o'clock, we're loading the bus to come home. So they just rapid fire those races. They give about 30 minutes for each race, and you're on the starting line, and you just keep going.
Now, when you get back home, do the kids go back to school, or usually they get the day off?
When it's on a school day.
Yeah.
If we get back that early, we go back to school. With how it progresses, most of the time during our weekly meets, they'll start those races around 9 o'clock. And so by the time we get done at 1, we get back at 3, and they just usually will. I mean, it's during practice hours.
Yeah, because Ponca, you have to drive everywhere, right? You got to drive no matter what.
But we have a lot of Saturday meets this year.
Yeah.
So
what for the kids? What's preparation like? Because like you said, you're leaving a lot of times very early in the morning. You get there, and I'm sure you want a little bit of a warm up time.
We get there with enough time. We kind of my coaches, Coach Campbell and Coach Barron, we all get down there with enough time for them to run the course as a team. So we give them the course map, and then it's one of our requirements that the entire team, everybody that's there, go run the course together so that they're familiar with it before we even start. And then each individual group, if you're on the JV boys or the JV girls, they do their individual warm-ups together as that team. So the varsity girls will go here. The varsity boys will go here when it comes time to do their dynamic warm-ups and get to the starting line.
So the kids basically run the course twice.
Yes. And that's a warm-up.
And that doesn't affect
it doesn't
their time.
Because they're going super slow, and that's just kind of getting them geared up and warmed up to go. Because a lot of times we get there and it's an hour before they run, or even sometimes an hour and a half before they run, because the coaches' meetings are often an hour before the meet, where the coach they talk, and if there's anything on the course, the markings, or if there's any holes, or we talk about medaling, and we just the general coaches meeting. But that's usually an hour prior to, and that gives them enough time to. It's a slow jog. Sometimes they walk it, just enough to be familiar with it. That way they're not lost when they start to run.
And there is an element of teamwork with cross country as well. And I would like for you to maybe explain that, because everybody looks at it as an individual sport, but having a group of kids that are around the same pace,
it's amazing.
It makes a huge difference as far as what they're able to do, because you may have sometimes a kid may be like, okay, I'm not the good closer, but if that kid can stay with him, he can go close, and having his friends and his teammates right there really help him get to another level, right?
It is. We talk about staying connected. Stay connected to the person in front of you. And if you can get 2, 3, 4 runners to stay connected, usually they're going to stay pretty close together. We have a couple that run almost side by side because their paces are pretty identical. And then we have one that'll run a couple of places behind him, but we ask him to stay connected to those 3 and then stay close enough to stay connected 4 or 5, because you take the top 5 times, and that's kind of that 5th time decides it in a varsity race. In junior high, it's the same thing. We kind of preach the staying connected, and if you can get all of those running connected, that drives those placings down, and you get that lowest score, and you can do some team placing as well as individual placing.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's pretty important as well to have one of those people that's in that, and that goes where maybe an upperclassman, they have experience, they know when to maybe kick it in that other gear, and also that person, I would imagine, has to be thinking about those teammates for that team to stay together, right?
Yes.
So that's where maybe experience comes in.
Yeah, we had, and like I said, last year we were young, and this year we're young. Wesley Vaughn's going to have a lot of that varsity experience. Bert's little brother Brody will be a freshman, and so he's running Bert his entire life, and they've seen the meets, and so they kind of know how they work. But they're individuals that work together, and so they're all the time. Hey, come stay with me. Hey, run my pace. And I mean, it's just an encouraging group. I mean, they're fun to coach because I don't have I don't have problems. I mean, we just go and we have fun.
Well, and that's the thing. It seems like you're very excited for this season.
Oh, I love it.
And it's one of those where maybe you don't have as many of the upperclassmen, and you don't have, as a coach, it's nice to go into the season knowing exactly what you have, but there's also a kind of fun factor when you go in and you're teaching and you don't know really what you're going to get kids competing, but you don't really know how high level they're going to compete, right?
That's exactly it. Like, especially with the numbers that we have. I strive to know everybody's name. That's my goal. And sometimes it gets difficult when you have 70 running in high school. But I strive to know their name. Coach Barron and Coach Campbell, the idea is that if we can teach them, running's lifelong. I mean, it's you can do it. It doesn't require a lot of talent. You don't have to have equipment. You can just go out and do it to stay in shape. But we encourage, hey, if you can do something here, you can do something there. You can run for the rest of your life and compete. And just like the Olympics, you see it all the time with that distant running. But we want to encourage the teamwork within the individual work, and being better people and being accountable, and so we kind of do that whole Wildcat way, just like the whole thing, keeping each other accountable, whether it be nutrition in the classroom. It's a phenomenal group.
And speaking of the Olympics, with it coming up, do you keep a closer eye on the distance running?
We watch it a lot, and then we text back and forth about it. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's one of those things. People that watch the Olympics, sometimes they find distance running maybe boring.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what a lot of people see, but imagine if you're coaching and if you're in it, you see all the little intricacies of this person's doing this, and this person, why are they going so early? And then naturally, the Olympics do such a good job telling stories. You get to know the runners a little bit as well.
And then you follow them. You follow them on their runs because they're using different apps to do it. You follow their Instagram pages at all the different things they do. But then you watch when they're running, and if one of them falls, you feel it. It's just kind of you get to where you just you start to follow that distant running.
Is there any of those distance runners that you I mean, I know you're rooting for all the Americans, right? But
pretty much.
But at the same time, is there any to watch?
I don't particularly have somebody. You could probably ask Bert, and he would probably tell you everything about every one of them. I personally just like to watch them all together and just cheer for everybody, because distance running is not easy. So if they're going to commit to lifelong running, I'm all for it. Everybody,
I don't know. I've watched the distance running. Oklahoma State, I think, may have a distance runner in there, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if OU, I know, has some gymnasts that are in there.
I don't think they have any distance running.
Yeah. So it's cool to see some of that local flavor.
Absolutely.
When it comes to a lot of that stuff. And you got to realize that some of these sports are so international that there's even ones that go to school that here that are actually competing on another country's team. Yeah.
And a lot of those that you're going to see from OSU, they probably know because they in high school they saw them at a school different before they went to OSU. So that's kind of they like Peyton Hinkle ran for Broken Arrow a couple years ago, and she's running for OSU. So it's kind of fun to see her name out there. And so not running in necessarily the Olympics, but just to see those kids that you've seen before running at that collegiate level proves that they can do it too.
Yeah, and I would have to ask Heather this with swimming, but I would imagine that there's more interest in some of these sports after an Olympics happen, right?
So, personally, I love watching the swimming in the Olympics too.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's probably my favorite.
We have a phenomenal swim team here. Heather's done amazing with what she's built in the program, and so I'm all about that, because hers is kind of the same thing. You have that individual, and then you have that team, so it's kind of the same preface as golf or tennis or cross country. All those, your individual but team.
Well, and it's one of those, we get the main sports all the time here in the U.S., but this is where we actually get to showcase some of those others. And a kid, is looking around, and all of a sudden they look and they see this person doing some success there, and they're like, maybe I want to give this sport a try. And I think that's just really good for some of the sports that aren't publicized a lot here in the U.S.
And we have some kids that are so quiet in school. And like Weston now, he's one of the quietest kids I've ever met in my life, but he's a dang good runner. He came out and a couple of years ago, and he runs really good, but they're just quiet. And I would have been like, hey, you want to try running cross country? What's that? You just come run, and then they love it, because it's something that they can do, and it's not the whole pressure of all the other people watching them and doing it. But you get some pretty good runners coming out.
Well, and the competitiveness comes out too for a lot of those as well. So, and like I said, the one thing you can always get better.
You can always improve.
Especially with younger, you're going to have when you get older, you're going to start fading a little bit. But for a younger person, you can always work on a better time.
Yeah, you can keep progressing. You can set your goals to do it every single year. Your placings can always go down. And the thing that we kind of let them know is it doesn't matter if you get a medal. We're looking at times. I mean, we always want the medal. We always want to get a medal at a meet. But if your time is 20 seconds faster than it was last week and you didn't medal, that's still good.
Well, and there's so many elite runners.
Yes.
Like
Oklahoma's full of them.
But I don't think people don't understand how many good elite runners, long distance runners there are in the state.
When you watched the state track meet last year, that was enough to prove it. I mean, some of those guys that were out there in front. I mean, it's just amazing to watch. I mean, I just sit in awe, kids from every school.
Yeah. A lot of kids going to get some college scholarship money.
Hands down.
Track and field, cross country, and others.
Yeah, and we had several the last few years ago. We've had one go every year, and Mason and Andrew, and they're both transferring to OSU, not going to run, but they've ran for 4 years. Bert's still running. Isaiah's going to go run. So just to keep producing those runners that can actually go compete at the next level.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like sometimes we get in this lane of you got to be the best no matter what. You need to be on the Olympic level. But for a young person to be able to go get their college somewhat paid for a little bit and compete at the next level, that's important. And that really is something that I know that coaches take pride in.
Absolutely. The goal that we have is to get them what they can. And I'll work to get anybody anything. If they want to at the next level, I'm going to work to try to get them there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Coach, I really appreciate the time. Best of luck with this season. I'm sure we'll talk to you a couple more times throughout the season, check in on things. Enjoy the young team. And I know those few seniors in there. I hope they have a good year as well.
Thank you very much.
And we'll catch you later on the season.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Hey, I want to say thanks to Chris behind the camera as always. And that's going to do it for this episode of Coach's Corner. For Wendy Landis, coach of cross country, Jordan Woodruff saying goodbye. And we'll catch you next time right here on Coach's Corner.